You're listening to Science and Saucery, a show dedicated to adding life to your years. And now your hosts, registered dietitian Juliana Hever and scientist Ray Croneiss.
Good morning.
Good morning, Raymond James.
How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm really excited because we have a major breakthrough today.
Yes.
The last edits.
I hope so. It's been quite a few edits, but wow.
Every time we think that we're done, then another set comes on and another set of PDFs and another set of proofreaders.
Yeah, it's been pretty intense. It's like it's so grueling to have to look with a fine-tooth comb at stuff you've been working on for so long and you love and you're passionate about and you feel like you got it just right. And then someone makes it better and you're like, dang, all right.
And I think one of the interesting things is how you can look at something over and over and still not see the mistake. It's crazy.
It's crazy. I mean, I really stopped seeing the writing after a while. Like I can't look at it anymore. It doesn't even go in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's weird.
So, and we got to talk about whether or not we want to do a read on this for everybody, because I know there's a lot of people that like to listen to stuff. I know it's not that much to read, but still they like to do it when they're out on a walk or driving in traffic. And
I love a good audiobook. It like motivates me to run longer, walk longer, get stuff done, and you don't have to go anywhere. And we only have 4 chapters, so I think we should do it.
Right. I mean, and I don't know of any audio cookbook.
Well, we can't really do our recipes. Like that would be kind of funny. Okay, 1/4 cup.
I don't know. Some people might like it. Who knows?
That would be kind of funny. Like someone's telling you how to talk. So actually you're sitting there in the kitchen and they're like, okay, rewind.
So what's the next step?
Well, hopefully it's out of our hands. And now we get to focus on other projects that we've been excited about. And then we're going to hopefully in like a month or so, or I don't know when, we're going to have this gorgeous full color, hardcover, beautiful baby of ours drop into our laps. And we are going to be ecstatic.
Yeah, it's so much fun when it comes the first time and you look and say, wow, it's all real.
Yeah, we've never had one this beautiful either. Like this is spectacular. This is very special.
Yeah, and each step of the way, it's just like another part of it reveals itself. We got all excited the other day just because of one color on the spine. For some reason, that made such a big difference. You wonder all these little things that, someone picks up and they may or may not notice, or they may notice. But the point is, it just feels so good to watch it evolve.
Come to life.
Yeah.
It comes to life. Yeah. Well, that is my favorite color. And I love what they did. They have really talented people at DK Books. So we scored.
That's right. So we got some other things coming. We're going to be blogging at healthspansolution.com.
We are back to blogging. I mean, this is really exciting, but together, like this is a fun project. I'm really enjoying this so far.
I stopped, I think in around 2015, 2016. I wanted to do more here and there on the cold stress and here and there on metabolism, but I didn't want that to be defining everything I did. And, in some sense, so much of that stuff got loose, and then it became like every other sort of fad diet where suddenly they just start repeating things and you start seeing it. In fact, it's like that telephone game, but I
was just going to say that. It's just like the telephone game. It's like misinterpretation and pass it on, and then it just gets dilute and the intention is lost. And what you were saying and all of the science behind all of these amazing things were lost in translation.
Right. Yeah, it becomes least common denominator. But what's real fun is I think still people have a lot of interest in metabolism. We have a lab, so we can walk 25 or 30 feet from where we're sitting right now, and we can actually measure our metabolism and measure the response. And I think, there would be a lot of interest in involving a wider community in helping us debunk the myth. So rather than us just come on as authorities and say, we're going to debunk this myth, we're going to debunk this, or, this isn't true or that's not true. Wouldn't it be great to have more of a project where we can, get somebody over here? I haven't measured a broken metabolism yet.
Isn't that mind blowing? I mean, that's when we had our first conversation, that's what blew my mind, because I spent 20 something years like officially studying nutrition and metabolism, diet and weight loss and all of this stuff and health. And you figured it out. Like, I never got to any conclusions like yours, and yours, everything matches exactly what the science and history says.
And I didn't figure it out as much as I read it, because, I want people to understand what I love to do is really dig deep and try to figure out where the genesis of things happen. And if you think about, if you're reading a good novel and you just read the last chapter, you miss so much that happened. But what's really interesting about that is if you know how the story ends and then you go back and reread the book, you actually pick up so many clues that you would have probably never seen along the way. And so it's not so much that I discovered new things as that I rediscovered metabolism as it was discussed and studied when it was cutting edge science. Because at one time, we didn't know where the inner heat came from. At one time, we didn't know oxygen existed. At one time, we didn't know that respiration and combustion were identical chemical processes. And so what's really amazing is that when those scientists a century ago were studying it, yes, they didn't have the technology we have today. It took a lot more work to do what we can do in the lab here with just pushing buttons and, get a very accurate answer. But our measurements and their measurements
match up. But I mean, not only do you have this advantage, this 2020 hindsight advantage, which you do, there's a lot of context that's evolved in this last century that they couldn't have expected, and things have changed kind of dramatically in terms of the food supply and how we eat and the myths that evolved out of frustration. And
yeah, but a twist on that would be, I feel that if I could take, a half dozen of the greats from the late 19th century, early 20th century, and transport them to today, and we were having a conversation, they would understand the situation better than somebody graduating from school right now.
Absolutely.
Because it's been so distilled. And that's not actually being demeaning to the people that are graduating. I'm not trying to say that, I'm not trying to cast aspersions on that, but there's so many details that you have to learn. And it's become so complicated that you can't possibly study it at that level. So something that, right over here, behind me, something that is a whole, there's Liebig, there's a whole book right there on his views of protein, carbs, and fat. And now that's distilled down to a sentence or two in a textbook today. And it's not that he got it all right. And he didn't. In many ways, there are explanations in all of these books that are complete quackery. The explanation, but the data that they collected, that's what's interesting. The interesting part is that the data, the observations, aren't biased by what we think today is going on. So every study that we have has some amount of bias. We try to control for it, but I have bias, you have bias. And the idea that when you go back and look at these historically significant works and you just simply look at their observations, then you actually get this completely different lens on the world.
I have a question. Because, yes, those are the foundations, and they were observing it from scratch, if you will, without all of the obfuscation that's everywhere. But my question to you is, do you think that the reason it's so misinterpreted right now is because people are not looking at the original information and looking at it from a foundational sense? Or are they driving it into all of this really super complicated stuff like hormone interactions? And I mean, they're making up all sorts of crazy stuff. Is that because they're desperately trying to seek answers for what's happening today? Or do you think it's really just a misunderstanding of the real fundamental elements of where this began?
I think that when we look at the food industry, the fitness industry, and the medical industry, if we put aside the conspiracies and the evil corporate deeds that everybody tends to focus on when they're upset about something, and we say these are just businesses, and these businesses are there to succeed. They want to make money. They want to pay their employees. They want profits. And nothing's wrong with those things. However, when you intersect that business requirement with the social need, which is people want to be diagnosed. People want to believe there's something that's outside of their control because that's a relief. I mean, when you don't get your homework turned in time in school, and at that same day that that it's due, the big thing's due, that there's a big storm and school closes down, but you really didn't have it done, there is this sigh of relief, not my fault. And when it's
not
something,
my fault, and being able to just pop a pill or have something just done to you where it's just done.
I wouldn't go in the direction of pop a pill because that's already assuming something. I'm just talking at a fundamental human level. People want to feel like they're in control, but at the same time, when things aren't working the way they want them or think they should, when their blueprint of how they think the world should be doesn't match what they observe every day, it's so much easier to find something that is the root cause that's outside of your control. And I think what ends up happening is that on the food side, people then go through the nutrition and say, oh, you're not getting the proper nutrition, or this food here is causing you to have increased leptin levels, or this food here is causing insulin spikes. And we always want to get down to some mechanistic explanation, not really to understand it, but to explain away things that might be in our control. And think about it, there's very much empathy with someone who has an unbelievable accident on a ski slope. Surely everybody feels bad about that person. But the way you treat someone who's critically injured on a ski slope is very different than someone who gets some sort of congenital disease, which is beyond their fault. I mean, we as a society should have a different level, not in the empathy of how they feel and how their family feels, but the fact that something that's completely in their control, they decided to go skiing. Yeah, it's unfortunate that they got hurt and you want them to get better. But someone that you look at that you see was born with a birth defect, a severe birth defect, or someone who's born with a severe congenital disease, and you see not just that they're a child, but the fact that they absolutely have no control of it. I think in society we look at those things different, and I believe that a lot of the business of those major industries end up going into the not my fault. Either people want to talk about, oh, this food is addictive, and the food companies design these foods so that we can't stop eating them. And on the medical side, it's like, I'm deficient in this, I'm deficient in this, my thyroid's not working. It's a hormonal thing, it's something, it's testosterone, it's something. And then on the fitness side, it's always this deficiency in this nutrient or that. I don't have enough branched chain amino acids. I got to get more protein. I got to get more short chain fatty acids, medium chain triglycerides. People can throw all these things in. And really and truthfully, if we look at the distribution of people, a lot of it just comes down to, people are slightly different. People attack things in a different way, but that person who's winning, in whatever area of life they're winning, they're really killing it. They're really doing something difficult. So, bringing back to the question, I think what's changed from then to now is that there are a lot more opportunities to buy your way out of doing the hard work. And we see this with our clients.
Yeah. And from a psychological perspective, self-esteem is based on success, like making a decision, having accountability for that decision, and then succeeding because of that decision. And that's what builds upon self-esteem. And that's what's required for these things. And which is why I love that our message to everyone is, you're not broken. Here's, you need to just take accountability and make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, just imagine the relief. Or maybe we should reflect, not imagine. Reflect on the relief that a lot of our clients get the day that we're talking to them, and we just won't let them take the I'm broken approach.
Right. They have a story and they're sticking to it, and this is what's wrong, and it's not me, and I'm doing everything I'm supposed to. And then we say, well, it's not working. So, right. And then we talk them down off the ledge, as we call it. And there's always a sigh of relief and this more empowered end result where they feel ready to go and do it again because they know what they did, and they take accountability for it, and they move on and succeed.
Yeah. And so I really believe that at that moment, we start unwinding those things. I mean, that's really what we do in the transformation is we get people to start taking those actions every single day, every single meal, and eventually in this bite. And it's not about being deprived because we make it fun.
Right.
We're always laughing and joking about the crazy things that it's just amazing the excuses I can come up with not to do certain things. I mean, you know, but you catch yourself now. It's one of the really interesting things that one of the best parts of coaching people is that you see yourself everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how you and I
It's
are.
like,
Sometimes you don't like it even. Like we talk about those issues, the same issues that we face every single day.
We call each other out on
and,
it.
Yeah, and it's raw. It doesn't feel, but it's so relieving to get it so it's not something that's hidden and buried down. You know, the more you bury, the more you hide, the more difficult it is. You
don't progress like that. You just tuck it away. And then, you know, you have this feeling like you're kind of broken or like this doesn't work but it's something it's so vulnerable to talk about this stuff. Like it's painfully vulnerable, especially if you've been dealing with it for a long time and it's part of, you know, your story. And we always try to break stories, but those stories are very personal and deeply embedded into our, you know, the thread of our being. At least we think it is, you know, and no one stopped us before. People say, oh, that's because blah, blah, blah. And they kind of, you know, the empathy comes out, which is what I'm so good at. Like I am an empathizer. You're trying to break me of being so empathetic with our clients. It's great in real life, but not for clients because I empathize everyone to, what's the word? Just maintenance and to
mediocrity.
Mediocrity. Exactly the word I was looking for, of course. It's debilitating. But like, you know, you feel bad. You've been there, you've done that. You want to make them feel better. But what I've learned from working with you is that actually it makes people feel better, like I said, about self-esteem is by taking accountability, making different choices, and succeeding.
Yeah. And you know, obviously, once you have a contract with another person and you say, look, I'm going to give unyielding accountability. I don't want to be empathetic in this case. And specifically, we toss out empathy when it's something that's in your control. When it's something completely out of your control, empathy is absolutely the way to deal with it. So if you have a certain diagnosis and it is a clinical diagnosis and you're not going to get better, the most human thing you can do with that person is be empathetic. But when it simply is they have to change some habits, I mean, we're talking about swallowing and wiggling. And we say things in these funny, non-technical ways just to put a point on it. It's like, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've said, you know, have you ever seen a squirrel run a marathon? No, you don't. Yes, they run around all day, but they're trying to get something done. Animals move the least so they can eat and mate the most. That's what they do. I mean, at the end of the story, they move far enough away from their home so they don't poop where they sleep. But other than that, they move the minimum amount to find a mate and to find food. And we do just the opposite. We maximize movement so that we can swallow a little more. Mm-hmm. You know, some people, you know, maximize movement so they can find many mates, you know, and so, you know, my point here is that, you know, back to the empathy concept is that, you know, when we make that contract with our new clients and say, look, you know, food was fun. Eating all the time and eating this decadent stuff was fun. Why deny that? Why say, oh, it wasn't healthy for me? It wasn't. No, it's fun. It's amazing. But not now. We're not going to do that now. And so if you give someone deprivation and have them, we always have them comparing every day, being deprived with all of this entertainment and social pressure to eat and all the things that come in the average day, you're not going to win. You're not going to win that battle. Eventually, the fun's going to win. But when we start laughing at all the things we do, when we get the text from the person who's in the supermarket line checking out and looking at the basket in front and saying, oh my God, I used to put the same stuff in my basket. I can't believe, you know, and you want to say something, but it's not your business what they're doing. Yes, you used to do it. Get over it. Now just look at it. Don't say anything. You know, it's like that Derek Silver TED Talk, which he talks about announcing goals. And when you announce the goals, you feel as if
you've achieved them.
You've achieved it. And then, you know, when you have to be silent and just get it done, it really motivates internally. So, I think that a bigger part of the society, to sort of wrap all of what we just talked about up, I think a bigger part of society is this not my fault culture. It's easy to try to blame everybody else for what's going on. At the same time, you have the idea that we know so much about the body and there's so many details, and science doesn't reward repeating great science. Science rewards new innovations. So everyone by default is looking for the great new idea and not trying to go back, like what we've been doing in our papers, going back to some of the original work, sort of deconstructing it with a modern viewpoint, knowing how the story ends, and then publishing review articles and proposing new studies that will sort of breathe life into their
and
old
move
ideas.
that stuff forward into modernity.
This data. We want to use the observations then.
Well, I mean, the fact that you can recalculate something completely from scratch and it matches the numbers already recorded. I mean, that's objective. That's not like opinion. That is, here is the facts. This is what RQ looks like. This is what metabolism looks like. I mean, it's very
you're measuring
objective.
You're measuring it.
Science.
I mean, I having arguments and debates with people about metabolism, and I mean, in their mind, they really are passionate about it, and I love that when people are passionate about it. But then when I stop and ask a simple question, have you ever measured a metabolism? And the answer is no. And I'm thinking, what? I may be wrong in this situation. I very well might be wrong. I love when I'm wrong because I learn something new. But I'm thinking to myself, if I were having a debate with somebody about a subject that I've never even measured in my entire life, and I'm going by PubMed scans and abstracts and what I read on a blog, and then I have someone standing in front of me that's measured hundreds and hundreds of metabolisms and many, many conditions, I'd really want to be asking more questions. I would rather not be so authoritative because agreed, I may be wrong about this particular thing, and that dialogue is there, but people grab onto these ideas and these complex things. They try to simplify the world. You don't understand it all. I don't understand it all. We compress all of that data and we compress the world and our views so that we can try to understand a little bit of it. You throw out good data, I throw out good data, and then we meet in the middle, and maybe the critical piece of data both of us threw out. So we really want to have the discussions, but it's amazing to me how many people out there are authorities on things they've never really researched and measured.
Or worked with people one-on-one and witnessed it and experienced it. I know those are just N of one anecdote, but that's important too. Like having to deal with the real life process of these things, because swallowing is not just swallowing. And like you say, food is the universal social lubricant. There are no events that are not centered around food. I'm going to get on the plane for just about 4 hours tonight. They will try to feed me, or we stop at the gas station and there is food everywhere. There is food everywhere. And it is so deeply embedded in every part of our day and interaction with people. We celebrate holidays and it's like the traditions, and it reminds you of your grandma, and this recipe is from so-and-so, or you're just meeting someone new. And there's so many things surrounding food that's not just food itself. And it's not just any of that other stuff. There's just very deep things. So, when you believe something or you've experienced something or you've lived by something, like a principle by which you make decisions on food, anything contrary to what you believe or want to believe or have known fundamentally to be true is very disruptive. And, that's where bias comes in. You will fight for your truth and you will fight tooth and nail to make sure you have an answer, and you will blindly ignore things that say anything contrary to what you believe because you want to stick with your narrative and what you know to be true. It's very hard to shift in your thinking on, especially, I would say probably more than anything, it's like food and religion, right? The two things that
Politics,
that too.
Yeah. And so, but what's really great about what we do ultimately is it's objective. We can go to the kitchen.
Yep.
We can go to the lab.
Yep.
We can go to the history books. The fact of the matter is when those three things triangulate I'm going to get back to your N of 1 for just a second. If I'm hunting for side effects using a biologically active compound, and I want to see on the most people what the side effects are, this idea of doing these huge studies are really important. If I want to assess the damage of slapping my finger with a hammer, N of 1 is actually quite appropriate. So when we talk about this, everybody throws out logical fallacies. Everybody throws out N of 1. Everybody throws out diagnosis bias. Everybody throws out all of these things. But at the end of the day, when history books and the kitchen and the lab match, I'm betting the next 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people that walk through that front door, I'm betting they're going to get the same results too.
It's generalizable at that point. And it was mind-blowing for me because, even in nutrition school, they teach you everyone's different and everyone's got their own things. And then you start wondering, does someone have more hormone this and hormone A and all of those things that are really taught. I mean, they are part of the principles.
They're believed.
But they're
deeply
shared with students who are there vulnerably, like soaking up like sponges as much information they can so they can go out there and make a difference in people. And, I questioned it because, of genetics we're all 99% the same genetically, all of that stuff. Like, it doesn't make sense in the science books, but that's what they teach. And that's what people really believe. Well, I have this problem, I have that problem, blah, blah, blah. What really shook my world was when we took 4 women around the same age, around the same weight. They started at around the same time. And it was so much fun because almost daily, almost verbatim, we got the same exact experiences. The text saying whatever, like they were experiencing very similar things. So these were 4 women in different parts of the world.
Right back to selfies and the size of the pants that they were trying on.
Yeah, they're sending us these hot selfies. Look at me, I'm in the new size. Or, oh, I'm constipated today. Or just things that you wouldn't really, they were all the same. And that to me was like, wow, people really are very much the same. We aren't broken. And, I've seen a couple broken people. Once in a blue moon, you have someone that comes in with a thyroid disorder, but that has nothing to do with, anything else. You just go and fix it. Like, that's something that's medical. But more than not, people are very, very similar. And that's comforting because you feel like, oh, okay, I know if this book says I need to do A, B, and C, and this is what's going to happen, D is the result, it's going to be like that. And I could just dedicate myself to following A, B, and C. I think it's comforting and empowering.
I think so too. And I love the idea that, we're not broken. I think it's a really powerful place to start. And even if you are, it's still a powerful place to start. If you do have something wrong, it's much more empowering, I think, to start from a idea of doing everything that you can do before you look at the kinds of radical interventions, especially ones that aren't reversible. When we look and, for example, compare, it takes a lot of time and energy. You've seen that now in the last, couple of years, how much energy that we put in each one of our clients that is losing, 60, 70, 100 pounds. And compared to bariatric surgery, we spend a lot of time. And so I'm not surprised that our, friends that do those surgeries, I'm not surprised that from their worldview, wow, they see these people succeed. But then the downside is that these people often come to us after they have a short-term success, because at the end of the day, their success is not because of the surgery, really. It's because they stop swallowing.
No, I mean, there's a big difference there. There's a biological enforcement of not being able to swallow.
Right.
And then they just throw them out in the world and say, eat your protein. And then people don't really know what to do, and they just biologically can't eat for a while until they learn how to re-eat again. Versus what we're doing is like, go jump it. You're in your real world. Do not do anything differently. This is how you navigate the world, because you will not get away from navigating a day-to-day situation, the holidays, the celebrations, the get-togethers, the relationships, the connections. You can't navigate that from a biological perspective. You have to deal with it socially and psychologically, and you have to have those tools to be able to feel empowered to make the right decisions, to meet your goals and stay where you want to feel optimally for you. So that's I've seen it now so many times, and how many people have come to us and say, I've had surgery, I lost weight, but now I'm getting it back, help. And we're like, sorry, it's awful, because at that point, it's almost a point of no return. We can't do the same things that we would have done with them prior to the surgery. I just think it's so
right. And
scary.
even when we think about it this way, if we just assume and say, let's just assume, we always talk amongst ourselves and with our clients about not having an off switch, meaning you love to eat. You just love to eat a lot of food.
I don't have an off switch.
Right. So here's the point. Not having an off switch, if we just, for example, just say, okay, this is the issue. Let's just say that people who have gained a lot of weight share that in common with us. And we say, okay, you don't have an off switch. One way to deal with that is to physically limit how much they can eat. And, what you're doing is doing, something that probably mimics nature, meaning in nature, not having an off switch isn't a problem because in nature, food is rare. You don't have access to food. We look at the problem from a perspective of having an unnatural environment. Not that natural is good, not that natural is correct,
what is
but just
natural,
that
Raymond?
Natural is, in my case, and what I'm defining here is, it is the environment which we adapted to survive. And we adapted in a world of scarcity, and so we have coping mechanisms for scarcity. We don't have very many coping. We likely don't have coping mechanisms for excess. Clearly, look around. People don't have the willpower. And rather than focus on that as being negative, what if you just flip that problem? Because that's what we do. What if we say, no, you're not broken. It's fine. You love to eat. Eating's over when you swallow. We're going to reduce how much you eat for a little bit of time, but then you're going to be eating foods that are a lot higher volume foods and foods that you can eat a lot more of and not have a problem. And once we flip the problem that way and we reframe it, but then we engage them day after day after day after day after day over 90 or 120 days, it's a lot different than, going in and having some pre-meetings, having surgery, and then, checkups here and there. We're literally engaging them every day. And every single meal, in some sense, we're on their mind. Having that allows them to flip the little switch, to have the coping mechanisms, to realize, look, chicken's just a delivery system for sauce. Nobody likes boiled chicken, and I can deliver sauce with all kinds of foods.
Oh, but you can.
And the sauce that you make doesn't have to be made out of olive oil. There's all kinds of thumbs, or lard, or coconut, oil. I mean, the fact of the matter is there's all kinds of decadent ways to make sauces. So as we really cut through this and we help them unwind the way they think about the world, we allow them to just go ahead and be broken, if you want to call that broken. If we want to assume the off switch is broken and say, okay, yeah, so your spouse doesn't have the same problem. They seem to be able to do fine. Well, the point is they just stop. They stop. Calories aren't magic. You don't automatically get 50 or 60 or 100 pounds overweight. It can happen over time. But the fact of the matter is, the only way you're going to fix this problem is to stop swallowing so much. That's all there is to it. It's not a wiggle problem.
I was on a mission since I was a little girl. This is why I've been obsessed with nutrition and diet my whole life. I mean, growing up in LA doesn't help. It's all about how thin you are. And I was acting and dancing and I always had to be thin, thin, thin. But I was on a mission, as far as my brain can remember and have memory, of figuring out how those people that are quote unquote naturally thin stayed naturally thin. Because to me, it was like this, how do people do it? Like those friends that it seemed like they were eating as much as you, but then they were always thin. And I've been studying it and studying it and studying it. And it's so simple. They just eat less, and they do have an off switch. And I know some people that are just like, it's a chore to eat. They're just like, ugh, I have to eat because I don't want to lose weight. I'm like, ugh, I hate you. Never experienced that in my life. Yeah. But it is very interesting and scientific. It just makes it very simple. It's just very super simple. What a concept.
So, today we just wanted to have a quick conversation. We don't know where we're going to take Science and Saucery in the end. We'll probably do some things that aren't so off the cuff and all over the place. We'd love to hear from everybody about the things that they're interested in hearing us talk about more. I definitely want to do some science lessons. I definitely want to do some history lessons.
I want to do some nutrition news and debunking all of those myths that come out on a daily basis. I find that so fun and fascinating, just to watch the headlines and see how people respond. And so I want to just, bring up news topics and talk about that. And I love everything nutrition and food.
And food. We want to talk about food, but food in a positive way. I don't think we really want to be a weight loss show, or I think
nutritious
we'll touch
plans
on these things and ideas, and when people are our clients, we go in deep with them. But the concept is, if we could just help define a whole new group of people that change the way they look at these problems, that change the way they tweet, that change the way they post on Facebook, that change their Instagram habits, that change the way they read blog posts, and be a little bit more discerning and a little bit more careful, but then also a little bit more self-reflective and say, wow, I am kind of doing this. And when you move from this diet to this diet to this diet, when you move from this activity to this activity, and always something, always trying to do something, instead of just relaxing a little bit and giving your body a break, we sleep, and our brains don't go dormant when we sleep, but like we're always swallowing. I mean, we wake up in the morning swallowing, we go to bed swallowing, we're always in the swallowing thing. And the point here is that
we need a little winter.
Yeah, a little metabolic winter, a little break. So we'd love to hear back from everybody about what you would want to hear from us. And we don't want to be yapping yet another podcast. In fact, I hate the P word. I don't even want to say it right now. I don't want to admit. And, for a while, maybe this is just with our
I was like, what's the P word? It's not protein in this context.
No, it's the podcast word because, I don't want to just jump in to do something just to do it. It's a lot of work.
We want to talk to people, and we want to pontificate together, and we want to share our ideas, but we also want to respond to what we hear every day and what our work is about. Like, we have a lot of things that we've been working on and a lot of passionate feelings about what we're working on, and we just want to have that discussion.
Yeah, so we definitely need to define this more, and but until that time, we hope you would like listening to us having these little conversations, and maybe we can do some interviews with people as well.
Yes, I want to do interviews. I love interviews.
Thank you for tuning in today, and I really appreciate getting to talk to you.
And I want to say thank you for joining us on this leafy green path to great health.
It's always the food, so remember,
keep eating right.
Thank you for listening to Science and Saucery. For more details about the content in today's show or to contact Juliana and Ray, please visit us at healthspansolution.com.
Welcome